So in 1976, we decided to start a business to try and commercialize the work that we'd been working on.
Crazy tall order, though, to do a construct-to-order synthesizer, right, with only the highest quality components.
Well,
I mean, you guys were like...
the first of the Synclavier one, I'm not sure. That was pretty rickety. 8-bit D-Day converters. But the software did set it apart. It had a sequencer in it. You could hit the record button. And that's when you were recording to tape, and you hit the record button, play a track, pick a sound, hit the record button, play a track, and it's just like, wait a minute, what's going on? Well, it's a digital memory recorder. And so, we kind of pioneered that, especially in a portable instrument. I decided to stay with that team, and then we raised a little bit of money in 1979 for the purpose. We were trying to go national with the computer, but that's when all the computer companies were going belly up. Like there was Orange, Micro, and there were a lot of microcomputer companies trying to sell a little box with some floppy disks in it back then. This was before the PC became standardized. And of course, I was always interested in the music side, so we bought a Pratt & Whitney keyboard, put it in a little box. Yeah. I built the box and hooked that up to the computer. I wrote the software so that when John pressed a key, I would come to the FM side.
John Appleton.
Yeah, John Appleton, yeah. And, it's like, if I can, I was just having a blast. I mean, I wasn't on a mission to revolutionize the music industry. Denny Yeager understood that, and he helped the company focus on a product that would really revolutionize your jingle writing, your commercial music production scene. But so he provided a very valuable input. That was in 1980.
But did John push having the keyboard? Because you called it Synclavier, which implies synthesizer, and clavier, which is the keyboard.
The first word I came up with was clavecin, because we wanted the clavier.
So you did want a keyboard. You felt that was the superior mode.
I felt a keyboard was, and I'm not a keyboard player. I thought a keyboard attached to it was the most obvious solution to having a portable instrument, and so we hooked that up, and John, of course, he was a professor in the college. He was entrenched in the academic community. The electronic music studios of that era were great, big, huge. Well, there we go. There's an example right there. So when they wanted to go give concerts to one another, they had to do it by tape. So, here's my piece, and everyone sits in the concert hall and watches the tapes go around. Well, John was excited about having a portable, computerized musical instrument. Mm-hmm. I said, well, you know what, John? We can do that. We've got everything we need here. We'll just do that. So we built the prototype. We called it the Synclavier 1. And gosh darn it, if we didn't sell 13 of those, mostly to college and university music programs.
Just like Moog started selling to universities.
And Moog must have been, well, he was quite a bit early. He was 8 or 9 years earlier. That was
But university route it happened first that way.
And that's where the interest is. That's where the money was. And then of course it migrates into popular music and commercial music production. But so I came up with, I said, all right, we'll call it the clavecin. I pull out the dictionary, and of course there's the clavecin, which is a French harpsichord-like instrument, Clavecin, I think is how it's spelled. I said, okay, that isn't going to work. And I think it was John that said, wait a minute, we'll do Synclavier. And so that was in the summer of '77 that we came up with that name. And we registered the trademark that fall when we sold our first instrument.
So you had the keyboard, but you also created some other amazing controllers like the knob. There's nothing like, there's nothing like that. And
this then actually happened. It's just like a traditional music synthesizer. You have a bunch of knobs. You have a knob for the tuning, you have a knob for the amplitude, you have a knob for the filter. At NED, we had a manufacturing staff at that point building the computer. Okay, put 16 knobs on a little panel. We'll hook that up into the computer. There was going to be 16 knobs to control it. And so they built that. They came upstairs. There were 16 knobs on an aluminum bar. And I said, this is just not going to fly.
Yeah.
This is absurd. It would be like using a buggy whip to fly. I don't know what it was. So I said, all right, well, let's use one knob, and we'll use buttons to tell it what to do. So we had the knob, and it had rubber bands. Oh, the rubber bands would break. But we had a knob and the button panels, and okay, it's like a data wheel, and so that took off really well. We hired a good mechanical engineer to actually figure out how to put the parts together. But that's when we invent. And the thing about the knob, when you're dealing with musical sounds, when you're trying to design a synthesizer that would really make a very wide range of sounds, the parameters you want to control go over a very wide range. You want to be able to go from 10 hertz to 10 kilohertz and adjusted by a tenth of hertz. You need incredibly fine resolution. So the Synclavier knob, it was a rate of change of controller. You could control how fast it was going up or down. So to dial the attack out to 10 seconds, well, it took a little while. It wasn't choop. But, you want 9.999. Oh, okay, that's the sound you want. So when you're trying to come up with a device a synthesizer that really gives you, artistic, very, very intricate control, intimate control over the sound, well, the Synclavier knob was a good match.
It's perfect. And you also had dedicated buttons, so it wasn't like menu diving. Like that was the smart thing. And then you were because you can swipe across the buttons, and it was like the first touch, like ahead of iPad by 30 years.
It's a touch screen. The button panel was a touch screen, but it's not just a glass touch screen. It's a touch screen that gives you a little feedback as you went over the buttons. Those buttons were expensive.
How did that all happen, though? That thinking, was it because of working with John, or you guys just brainstormed off each other? Because there was nothing like it.
I remember finding the button in the Staco catalog. We had data books on the shelf. We'd buy integrated circuits from Kramer, and we were looking for the right button. And there was a Staco catalog, and we knew it had to be light. It had to be a very light touch. We knew it had to be a lit button. And so, we found the button. We did 2 rows of 8, and you know what? This is going to be fun. This is going to be creative. So that's when we built Synclavier 1, which I don't remember now, but it had the envelope section was pretty much like the later machines. It had a little 8-track sequencer. I remember that. It had 8 track buttons, and boy, I've been busy writing software ever since. But every time I'd write more software, there'd be fewer memories in the memory recorder. John would say, "Wait a minute, I'm out of notes now." Yeah, well, okay, I wrote some more software. I was always battling the limits of the computer. Up until now. Nowadays, it's like, how many gigabytes of RAM do you have? Okay, well, here's some more. It's $2. But back then, it was the technical challenges were just that. They were challenging. But that was. That's how Synclavier started. Of course, the company then went on. We did raise money in '79, and then in 1980 we hired Brad Naples, and Brad and Denny was consulting with the company at that point. And I was interested in playing the guitar or playing my bass at that point. I was in a rock band. I wasn't having much fun. I later went on to music school and developed more professional background in that area. Brad and Denny had a real vision for how this nascent technology could really revolutionize the day-to-day production of your sitcom soundtrack, your commercial soundtracks, your film scores. They saw that as I was just busy trying to get the bugs fixed.
It revolutionized the experience of the player, whether it was in post-production It was underutilized, I think, in live performance, but you could like have the most rapid sound design capability and having memory. Like there was nothing else. We were working on these big Moogs and nothing, you could save things. And all your real-time effects, like you created this whole like interface where you could put effects on anything. You could, and later on with sampling, you can employ the same synthesis type of controls on samples.
It's kind of interesting how that developed. We called it the partial timbre method. That was the patent. And by having 4 partial timbres in the timbre, by having 4 things you could address just by choosing the right button, you could mix sounds together so quick. As you say, it was sound design. You could take a sharp attack over here. You could take a slow attack on a drone sound over here, put them in, add a little delay. Blammo. You're in the studio. You need a new sound. You're making a commercial. You need a new sound. You're making the soundtrack for a TV commercial. You need a new sound. Well, it was so fast to do that on the. How did you do that before? Well, in the film world, you have your chem and. You know, you have an optical tape on a spool, and you synchronize it, or you need a mixing board. You have a multi-track tape recorder. You sync it up and you overdub it. So doing all that in real time from the button panel just allowed people to become creative on the spot, and of course that's where the whole industry was going, and that's.
Well, jumping ahead, once you had the direct-to-disc and the post-pro, you revolutionized pretty much every aspect of music, whether it's a live show where giant stadium acts would have all their background vocals on there. Post-production, Foley completely changed the scope of that, where you could quickly lock to picture and make changes, and then also edit the vocal sound very quickly, and then lay that back in. Composing for film, composing for TV commercials, TV shows. We could also demo the orchestra for directors before we would go in, and the first mock-ups were done on the Synclavier. I was a part of that. So it's pretty much every aspect of music was revolutionized by this amazing real-time controller that it wasn't just like, and then not to mention the quality of the sounds.
And it's funny, we developed the partial timbre method. We developed that way of working all back in FM, because that's all we had. And then just in the early 80s, 83 and 84, there was the 12-bit sampling started coming out. Both Brad and I said, we're not going to do sampling till it's 16-bit, full fidelity sampling. Well, just because, my ears hurt, whatever.
I bet.
There were some awesome 12-bit samplers out there, and more power to those inventors that had the courage, and they came out with a product, and that was revolutionary too. We waited, and it was the 4K dynamic RAM chips that came out in 83 and 84. It was still $10,000 a megabyte. It was expensive, obviously, that we were on the cutting edge, but we designed the polyphonic sample. People at the company were kind of struggling. Okay, we want to do the sampling. How do we do it? And I said, well, we're just going to take the FM synthesizer, which is 8-bit. We're going to make it 16-bit.
Please remember to like and subscribe. I've noticed that 75% of you have not pushed that button. And if you could just stop right now or remember at the end of this video to do that, it would really help us a lot. We have a big operation right now, and that's really what you can do to give back to the channel. And we're going to keep giving this content back to you. And in the spirit of back to the video. So tell us about how it was just the 4 of you.
During the pre-NED time, it was mostly Sydney and I working together. We did have, we had some software help. One summer, I learned very much from an older classmate there named David Pearson. He introduced me to the high-level computer languages. But it was mostly Sydney and I working, and with John. And when we formed NED, that was just Sydney and I. John wasn't involved in the company. He was a full-time professor, and Sydney and I were 2 people looking for work, so we started the company. We were a team, but we were a team with, there were three very diverse individuals with very different personalities. Each of us had our own issues we were struggling with at one time or another. But there was a bond between us where we felt committed to this crazy idea of FM synthesis in this box. I mean, for me, I graduated from college. Do I want to go on to grad school? Do I want to go? No, I want to see this stuff go somewhere. So we formed the company, and then the company was formed basically to manufacture and sell the computer, which it did. It sold a number of the computer systems. But then John and I we felt, all right, let's make a portable electronic musical instrument. So we did that. That was Synclavier 1, and then the company raised money, and Brad Naples joined the company. I remember the interview, and we thought there was a good match because he was a very business-oriented kind of person, which I was doing the books, but oh my God, it was tedious. And he was a very visionary person. He just said, this can go places commercially. And I'd never really looked at it from that point of view. So there was kind of a creative bond between Sidney and John and Brad Naples and I. And not that we always got along, but we always felt passionate about the technology, the instrument itself, the personality of it. That's when we had Synclavier. So it must have been 1979. The summer of '79, we had Synclavier 1 out there, and for what it was interesting. But I think Denny Yeager approached the company, said, guys, this can be historic if you'll only listen to me, is what he said. And he was a very successful jingle writer in Oakland there. And he was very successful. He would write stuff out, and they used a pit orchestra to make commercials for Merrill Lynch or whatever the business was. And he says, what, we can use a synthesizer to lower the production cost, to give new sounds. Instead of having to hire the pit orchestra, we can do more of the work ourselves. And so that was about a 2-year period where Denny kind of supplanted John in kind of the creative side. John obviously was a full-time professor in academic music. So at that point, the team, the real creative team but behind Synclavier 2 was Sidney and Denny Yeager, Brad Naples and myself. And Denny and I would talk forever. I'd forget that he was on Eastern time. He was out here. I'd call him at 8 o'clock in the morning, Eastern time. It was kind of funny. Denny was a big inspiration. He was so talented in a way that I wasn't. I was jealous of the talent that he had. He could sketch out the music. What keys? Oh, it doesn't matter. He would just sketch out the music. He'd know how to produce it all. I was jealous of that. I wanted to be more active in the music side. I left NED for a little while to go to music school. But we were just a creative team that I think from small beginnings we made a mark in the world. We came out with a product that here it is 50 years later. People are still using and talking about. And I think that's an inspirational story. It's not about me. It's about what can a young person do when they become inspired and passionate about something, and not just to become a celebrity in one song and you have an internet hit, you got a million hits, and okay, you're what? No, we worked hard for decades, and we took this budding technology, as primitive as it was, and you know what? We didn't let it defeat us. I don't care. It's 8 bits. We'll come out with an 8-bit synthesizer. There was FM, and those are some interesting sounds. Okay, it was going to be $10,000 a megabyte for the polysampling memory. And Brad said, you know what? I can sell that. We weren't afraid,
So in the original Synclavier, Were there any borrowed frameworks or things like that? Any hardware or code that may have been intended for something else that ended up in the Synclavier?
Well, yeah, the buttons, I think, were a military button. I think that was Staco. Staco was a military. In fact, that's what they provide now. They're still in business. They make autopilot disengage buttons and stuff like that for the military.
There you go.
Well, you know, Rob, the Synclavier came about. It was obviously the confluence of a couple things. But one of the things was the portable computer that Sydney and I had developed. We didn't care. We developed a computer because the data generals, they were the big bulky things that we had. We wanted a smaller one, a more state-of-the-art one. So that computer was developed to do scientific research at Dartmouth. That's when you had to buy a mini computer, and people wanted to get a little computer. I wrote the XBL compiler for it. And so people like in the chemistry lab, they could write a little software that collected data about how fast seawater melts, or at different pressures, or whatever the experiment was. So the computer was really developed for data collection purposes in the scientific community, and the FM voices had been developed to do computer-assisted instruction in music, specifically music composition. So we kind of borrowed that technology, and the focus was on a portable musical instrument. So really, it's like Frankenclavier, right? It's just,
Well, I remember a brochure.
Is what?
I remember reading a brochure on the Able 60, which was your first computer, but it was strictly a medical diagnostic brochure. And I'm like, what is this? Yeah. That's the one we're using.
Yeah, and that's what we called it. We called it the Able 40 when it had two of the 5 1/4-inch Shugart drives in it, and the big one with the 8-inch floppy disks in it, that was the Able 60. And that was, boy, I'd have to think of exactly what year that was. That must have been 75 and 76. It's just when do you suppose PC Magazine was founded? Right around then. It's when you could buy the hobbyist computer. There was the TRS-80. There was, this was very early. Computers were the rage. So yeah, I don't know where we came up with the trade name Able. It might have been an acronym. I don't remember. But yeah. So we were building and selling that computer for scientific uses, in a science lab, and 2K memory. Then it had 8K memory.
Wow.
These little boards. Yeah. Sydney and I were so proud of it. It was just like, well, we had the 1K board. These are all static RAM chips because they were easy to hook up. And then we did the 2K, and then we did the 8K board. And that means you could have 32K words of RAM in a computer. Then you could write data collection software, because XPL was pretty efficient about the codage. And while the compiler ran on the Dartmouth time-sharing system, the object code was sent over the phone to the computer, and the computer couldn't run the compiler because it didn't have any storage. So we had the little computer sitting there. It would talk to a 300 baud modem. You would type in to your typewriter and write the software on the Dartmouth time system. It would run through my XBL compiler. It would spit the object code over the phone line, load it into the computer, and it would start doing 100 measurements a second and creating a Fourier transform or an average, or I don't care, whatever the formula was. And so the object code had to be very, very tight. You don't want to sit there and wait while a 300 baud phone line is just, you don't remember what that, it's like, now, you're downloading, you're watching what's the new Universal movie? You're watching it on your iPhone, right? This was, anyway, so the object code was very, very efficient. We had very little memory to work with. So that's why it was all developed with those constraints in mind. So we took those pieces and, I don't know, we just wanted to make a portable musical instrument. That was John and I, John and Sydney and I having a beer one night, and we got to do this. We just have to do this.
Brilliant.
So we did it. Yeah, we did it.